In our world, many amazing events happen every day. Some of them are so unique and unusual that it's incredibly hard to believe they are real. In this video, I invite you to discover the most mysterious phenomena and incidents that even scientists cannot explain. Enjoy watching. In March 1876, farmers from the state of Kentucky witnessed a unique phenomenon that was called a meat rain. On the night of March 3, 1876, Mrs. Crouch was making soap on the porch of her house. Suddenly, she saw a piece of meat fall to the ground. After that, meat began to fall like rain. Mrs. Crouch called her husband outside so he could witness the wonder as well. The couple believed this phenomenon to be a gift from God. The next morning, other farmers learned of what had happened. Some men even decided to taste the meat. Most of the pieces were small, approximately 5 by 5 centimeters. Visually, the meat resembled beef, but according to those who tasted it, it was venison or lamb. News of the unusual phenomenon reached the media. After that, scientists became interested in the meat rain. Several samples of the meat were sent to a laboratory for examination. Experts determined that 2 samples were lung tissue, 3 were muscle, and the remaining 2 were cartilage. However, these results were insufficient, and scientists could not determine exactly which animals the meat came from, nor why it had fallen from the sky. Samples of the meat have been preserved to this day. This allowed modern scientists to study them in more detail. Experts found it strange that the meat came from different animals, and for this reason, they suggested that the meat rain was the result of vultures vomiting. By emptying their stomachs, these birds help themselves lose extra weight and gain speed in case of danger. However, this version seems strange, since Mrs. Crouch didn't see any birds that night, and for that much meat to fall from the sky, hundreds of vultures would have been needed. Unfortunately, the mystery of the meat rain remains unsolved. Oak Island is located off the coast of Nova Scotia in Canada. Oak is a small island of just 500 square meters and would likely have remained unremarkable if people didn't believe that treasure was hidden on it. This story began more than 200 years ago. In 1795, 3 teenage friends, Daniel McGinnis, Anthony Vaughn, and John Smith, met on the island as usual to play. At some point, Daniel noticed a strange mound under one of the oaks. Clearing the area, the friends saw a pit that resembled a mine shaft. The teenagers were intrigued by the discovery and decided to continue exploring. They managed to dig about 3 meters deep, but had to stop because a wooden barrier blocked further digging. When the boys returned home, they told their parents about the find. But the parents didn't believe the story. The friends didn't forget their discovery, and when they grew up, they returned to the tree where the pit had been. They were convinced that treasure was hidden in this place, but continuing the search without special equipment was impossible. For this reason, the friends asked for help from the Oslo company, which provided them with a winch. Unfortunately, this idea didn't help them reach their goal. The men managed to go 10 meters down, but each time they encountered a new wooden barrier that slowed the search for the treasure. Eventually, Daniel, Anthony, and John abandoned their attempt, but only temporarily. Several years later, John Smith decided to find the treasure again. He even purchased the plot with the abandoned shaft. He managed to reach a depth of about 27 meters, where he found a flat, rectangular stone with unknown symbols. When the inscription was deciphered, Smith was certain that treasure was hidden in the shaft, as the stone stated that at a distance of about 160 feet, there were gold. At a depth of 30 meters, Smith and his team found a fragment of a gold chain and continued the search. However, the shaft was soon flooded several times, and the research was once again halted. The treasure hunt resumed in 1909 and again in 1969, but none of the treasure hunters ever managed to reach the treasure. It is believed that the reason for this is a rock formation blocking the way, although it's also possible that there was never any treasure in the shaft at all. Guardian angels are amazing beings sent by God. It is believed that a guardian angel protects a person from the moment of their birth and always comes to the rescue if a mistake happens and the person is not supposed to die. Many people believe in the existence of spiritual protectors. However, when they are accidentally captured on video, most people for some reason consider such footage to be fake. In 2017, a video was published on one of the video platforms which sparked a lot of debate and discussion among viewers. In the footage, one driver just stops to let a girl cross the road. However, another driver doesn't see the pedestrian and continues driving. At the moment when a tragedy was supposed to happen, a mysterious creature appears out of nowhere, grabs the girl, and instantly moves her to the other side of the road. The driver, who almost hit the girl, gets out of his car and doesn't understand what is happening. Most users decided that the video was fake and had been edited from multiple frames. However, there were also people who believed in what happened and were sure that the girl was saved by her guardian angel. Interestingly, among the commenters, there were a few people who claimed to know the child. They shared that a year before this terrible incident, the girl's father had died, and they believed that her savior was the spirit of her dad. Whether this is true or not, no one knows for sure, as no names were mentioned in this story. From time to time, astronomers make discoveries of mysterious phenomena in space that defy explanation, and perhaps the most famous among them is the WOW signal. This radio signal was detected in 1977 by Dr. Jerry Iman using the Big Ear Radio Telescope during scientific research at Ohio State University. When Iman saw the signal's characteristics printed out, he was so amazed by them that he marked the values with a red pen and wrote the word WOW next to them. That is exactly why the signal received its unusual name. But what exactly astonished the scientist, and how did this signal differ from all others? The point is that it was incredibly powerful and lasted for 72 seconds. To send such a message, a transmitter with a power of over 2 gigawatts would have been necessary. It's worth noting that the most powerful research complex, HAARP, is capable of transmitting a signal up to 3.6 megawatts. So it's no surprise that this discovery became indirect evidence of the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations attempting to make contact with Earth. Iman himself was initially skeptical about the extraterrestrial origin theory. He assumed that it could have been a reflected signal from space debris, but his theory was disproven by further research. 40 years after the WOW signal was discovered, in 2017, astronomer Antonio Paris detected similar signals. They were emitted by several comets. This discovery helped determine that the WOW signal originated from the constellation Sagittarius and came from comet 266 Christensen. Thus, scientists managed to refute the theory that the signal was sent by aliens. However, this version did not satisfy ufologists, and they continue to believe that the signal cannot be a natural cosmic phenomenon. I think many of you don't believe in such a fantastic ability as levitation. However, the following footage raises many questions and could very well serve as proof that some people really can float above the ground. This video was published a long time ago, but to this day, no one has been able to explain what happened. The author of the video is a resident of Russia who went for a walk in the forest with his dog. According to the man, when he entered the forest thicket, his dog named Tarzan began to behave strangely. At first, he started barking and growling loudly and then ran forward. The man ran after his dog and after some time became a witness to an unexplainable phenomenon, which he captured on his phone camera. In the footage, we can see an adult woman standing on the ground and a little girl levitating in the air. The woman shows no fear and simply watches the child. At the moment when Tarzan starts barking again, the girl seems to wake up and descends to the ground, after which they both run away and disappear into the forest. When this video appeared online, many users dismissed it as fake. Most people believed the footage was staged. However, even after a detailed review of the video, it is impossible to see any wires or ropes that might have been used to suspend the child. Other users suggested that the girl was levitating with the help of supernatural forces. That is why Tarzan started barking, sensing the presence of spirits. One of the theories also suggested that the woman was a scientific researcher. She supposedly brought the girl into the forest to test new human flight technologies. In fact, there are many hypotheses trying to explain what happened, but unfortunately, none of them have any evidence. So we are left only to guess what really took place that day in the forest and how the girl ended up in the air. The image you see on your screen is a creative work by a Brazilian digital artist. After posting his artwork on a forum, he shared that he was inspired by the story of a small island located in the Atlantic Ocean, not far from the coast of Brazil. This island has long since disappeared from maps. but local fishermen still tell mystical stories about strange phenomena occurring there. According to these legends, there were unexplained disappearances of people and ships near the island. It is believed that the island was discovered in the 16th century by Portuguese navigators. They were amazed by the beauty of the place and decided to settle there. However, shortly after their arrival, strange events began to happen. Crew members started disappearing one by one, and those who returned told of terrifying visions and sounds coming from the depths of the island. Residents of Brazil even claimed that the island contained a portal to hell, so despite its beauty, the place remained uninhabited. In 1956, a group of researchers became interested in the island and decided to investigate the legends. They traveled to the island and installed several scientific instruments there. However, after a few days, all the instruments stopped transmitting signals, and the group itself disappeared without a trace. At the end of the 1960s, the island completely vanished from the face of the earth. Most likely, this happened due to natural causes, but the people of Brazil believe it occurred because the portal was closed. Since then, strange lights and unexplained sounds have often been observed in these waters. Fishermen still avoid this place, and scientists cannot find any traces of the vanished island. Peru is a true treasure trove of historical discoveries. For this reason, archaeologists regularly conduct excavations in the country and uncover many amazing finds belonging to ancient peoples. In 2010, by a fortunate coincidence, scientists discovered traces of a previously unknown advanced civilization. This discovery became a real sensation. In the dense Peruvian forests of the Amazon lies a hill known as Monte Grande. For a long time, it did not attract attention, but in 2010, residents of nearby settlements discovered ancient artifacts in its vicinity. They reported their find to scientists. After that, archaeologists began conducting excavations in the area of the hill. Just imagine their surprise when they found out that Monte Grande was not a natural hill, but a man-made pyramid. As a result of the research, scientists discovered that the pyramid is over 3,000 years old. This discovery became a real sensation, and here's why. It was previously believed that the Amazon River Delta, which crosses South America, was uninhabited for a long time. The first people who settled in South America tried to build their settlements away from the dense and impassable Amazonian jungle. Undoubtedly, some tribes did live in the jungle, but they were all nomadic foragers who moved from place to place in search of food-rich lands. These people were far from being a civilization and, of course, could not have built a pyramid. So who created this magnificent structure in the middle of the Amazonian jungle? Unfortunately, scientists cannot answer this question yet. Interestingly, even Spanish conquistadors in their travel records spoke of wealthy cities with majestic structures and temples built in the dense Amazonian jungle. However, scientists consider these stories to be nothing more than fiction, but the 2010 discovery changed their minds and forced them to admit that in ancient times, developed civilizations really did live in the impassable tropical forests of the Peruvian Amazon. Despite numerous scientific studies, the world oceans remains largely unexplored. Its depths hide many mysteries, including strange sounds whose nature scientists still cannot explain. One of them is the sound band known as bloop. The bloop was first recorded in 1997 on a hydrophone by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, in the Pacific Ocean. It was a low-frequency noise lasting about 1 minute. Scientists had never recorded anything like it, so they immediately began studying the phenomenon. They needed to determine what exactly was the source of the sound. It must be admitted that for many years, experts were unable to identify the nature of this mysterious sound. Eventually, scientists put forward an official theory about the origin of the bloop, but only in 2012. According to this hypothesis, the source of the sound was a massive iceberg that came to a halt upon contact with the ocean floor. Some people, particularly conspiracy theorists, disagreed with this explanation. In their opinion, the sound was made by Quakers, unknown creatures that live in the least explored depth of the ocean. In addition, fans of the works of science fiction writer Howard Phillips Lovecraft noticed one surprising detail. The bloop occurred near the area of the Pacific Ocean where, according to Lovecraft's stories, Cthulhu resided. Immediately afterward, artists began sharing illustrations of the monster bloop, and nearly all of these fictional creatures bore a visual resemblance to Cthulhu. Despite the scientific explanation, the true nature of the bloop sound remains unknown. When it comes to cases of alien abductions, ufologists immediately recall the Pascagoula incident. The disappearance of the Roanoke colony remains one of the most mysterious enigmas. This story began in July 1584 when a group of British colonists arrived on Roanoke Island, located off the coast of present-day North Carolina. Their goal was to establish the first British settlement in North America. The colonists managed to claim a small territory, despite protests from local tribes, and in 1587, a second group of settlers was sent to the island, where they were supposed to be met by 15 remaining Britons. The second group consisted of 155 people, led by artist and navigator John White. When they arrived on the island, instead of the colonists, they found only the remains of one person. The local Croatoan tribe told White that the British had been attacked by another tribe. The navigator knew that the previous group had behaved unfriendly toward the locals, so he decided to change tactics for establishing the settlement and sought to build good relations with the tribes. However, the natives, offended by the previous colonists, refused to cooperate and occasionally attacked the British settlement. For this reason, White decided to return to England for help, leaving 115 people on the island, including his family. Unfortunately, at that time, a war broke out between England and Spain. White was only able to return to the island 3 years later. When he finally returned to Roanoke, he found no trace of the colonists. The only clue was the word Croatoan carved into a tree. That was the name of a neighboring Native American tribe. What happened to all 115 members of the colony remains a mystery. There are several theories about this. According to one, the British may have been killed by Native Americans or by Spaniards from Florida. Another hypothesis suggests that the colonists tried to return to England but perished. Finally, some historians believe the colonists may have moved from the island inland and assimilated with a local tribe. In an attempt to solve the mystery, DNA research of local residents began in 2007 to determine any possible connection with the missing colonists and indigenous tribes. However, no clues were found. For this reason, the mystery of the Roanoke colony remains one of the most intriguing unsolved secrets of America's colonial era. Sailors know many stories about ghost ships, and perhaps the most famous among them is the maritime vessel Mary Celeste. This brigantine was built in 1860 at Joshua Davis's shipyard in Nova Scotia, Canada. Originally, the vessel was named Amazon, but one of its later owners decided to rename it, as from its very first voyage, the ship was constantly plagued by misfortunes. Thus, the ship received the name Mary Celeste, but this did not save it from tragedy. In October 1872, the brigantine came under the ownership of a consortium that included Captain Benjamin Briggs. In November of the same year, the ship, under Briggs's command, set sail from Staten Island to the Italian city of Genoa. In addition to the captain, the crew included his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 sailors. The ship did not reach its destination on schedule, and on December 5th, about 640 kilometers east of the Azores, the British brigantine Dei Gratia discovered a drifting vessel which turned out to be the Mary Celeste. Upon inspection, not a single person was found on board, although the ship itself was in good condition. In the hold, full supplies of food and water were found, along with the crew's personal belongings and documents. The inspection gave the impression that the crew had left the ship in haste, as if they were under immediate threat. What was astonishing about this story was that no damage was found on the hull of the Mary Celeste. Therefore, it was impossible to determine exactly what had happened to the people on board. To this day, the mystery of the tragedy on this ship remains unsolved. Some experts believe that the ship was attacked by pirates, while others are convinced that a panic was caused by an explosion of alcohol vapors, the main cargo that was to be delivered to Italy. Unfortunately, none of these theories have been confirmed, as neither the crew members nor their bodies were ever found. This story took place in October 1973 in the city of Pascagoula, Mississippi, involving 2 workers from a local shipyard, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. That evening, the men decided to go fishing on the pier, but suddenly they noticed a strange oval object about 9 to 12 meters in diameter hovering above them. What happened next is hard to believe, as it sounds more like science fiction than reality. Three strange creatures of small stature emerged from the spaceship. They had no eyes or mouths, but in place of their ears and noses were strange triangular protrusions. Their hands resembled crab claws, and their legs were fused together. In interviews, Hickson and Parker said that as soon as they saw the mysterious beings, they froze and lost the ability to move or speak. The aliens then somehow teleported them inside the spacecraft, where they were scanned by a strange round device. Afterward, the men were returned to the pier. The next morning, the shipyard workers reported the incident to the sheriff. They were then subjected to a polygraph test, which confirmed that they were telling the truth. Despite the polygraph results, the story of Hickson and Parker caused much skepticism, as there was no other evidence of the UFO's appearance. For this reason, the Pascagoula incident continues to be one of the most controversial cases of alleged alien abduction. The Voynich manuscript is the most mysterious manuscript in human history, primarily because it was written by an unknown author in an unknown language. The history of this artifact began when it came into the possession of antiquarian Wilfrid Voynich in 1912. The collector noticed the uniqueness of the manuscript and even attempted to decipher its text himself, but he was unsuccessful. Since then, thousands of cryptographers from around the world have tried to decode the cipher of this mysterious book, but nearly all attempts have been unsuccessful. The Voynich manuscript is a handwritten book created in the 15th-16th century. It consists of 272 pages, 240 of which have survived to this day. The pages measure 16 by 23.5 centimeters, and the total thickness of the manuscript is 5 centimeters. The book contains over 170,000 characters, as well as numerous illustrations. The entire manuscript is divided into 6 chapters, each dedicated to different topics, including botany, alchemy, and astronomy. Perhaps the most mystical aspect of this manuscript is that it contains illustrations of objects unknown to science. These features, as well as the fact that the book is written in an unknown language, lead to speculation that it was either created by representatives of extraterrestrial civilizations or is a fabrication by the author and holds no real meaning. Since the 17th century, the greatest minds of humanity have tried to decipher the text of the manuscript, but all their attempts have failed. Finally, modern scientists using artificial intelligence managed to get closer to solving the mystery of the Voynich manuscript. They have already succeeded in deciphering the first lines of the book. This breakthrough allowed scientists to determine that the manuscript was written by a human and is not a hoax, which means that within a few years, we may find out what the most mysterious book in the world is actually about. Although most people on our planet believe in what is written in the Bible, scientists maintain that the presence of Jesus Christ on Earth has not been officially proven. However, the Christian Church is convinced that the Shroud of Turin serves as such proof. The Shroud of Turin is a linen cloth bearing the imprint of a man's body. It is believed that this imprint may belong to Jesus Christ. The history of this artifact began in the 14th century when it was brought to France. At that time, clergy members immediately recognized the face of Christ in the man's image. Despite the fact that the shroud was declared a sacred relic, in 1452 it was sold to Duke Louis XIV, after which the cloth was placed in the Cathedral of John the Baptist in Turin, northern Italy. It was from that moment that debates about the authenticity of the artifact began. Modern studies contradict each other. According to some, the connection to Jesus Christ is supported by the presence of coin marks from Christ's era, as well as bloodstains consistent with wounds from nails. However, the results of other studies suggest that the cloth dates back to the 13th century. That is why the Shroud of Turin is both the most valuable and the most controversial artifact of the Christian Church. On August 2, 1947, a plane called Stardust, operated by British South American Airlines, took off from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and headed toward Santiago, Chile. On board were 6 passengers and 5 crew members. Unfortunately, the aircraft never arrived at its final destination. The plane, along with all its passengers, was declared missing. No one knew why Stardust had disappeared, and all search efforts were unsuccessful. However, 51 years later, in 1998, the wreckage of the aircraft was discovered by mountaineers on a glacier on Mount Tupungato in the Argentine Andes. This discovery helped reveal the reason for the plane's disappearance. But it also raised many questions about what had happened. As it turned out, the plane was preparing to land when an avalanche occurred in the mountains. Visibility during the natural event was zero, and the aircraft's captain mistakenly believed the plane had already cleared the mountainous area. The captain began to descend, and as a result, the plane crashed into Mount Tupungato. Due to the avalanche, the wreckage remained hidden under snow until the glacier began to melt. It would seem that there is no mystery here. The plane crash occurred due to weather conditions and pilot error. However, according to the Chilean air traffic controller, a few minutes before the tragedy, he received a message from the Stardust pilot, and it consisted of just one word in Morse code: Stendek. The controller did not know the meaning of the word and assumed the pilot had made a mistake, so he asked for the signal to be repeated, after which he saw Stendek again. A minute later, the same word was transmitted once more. After that, the plane disappeared from radar and the captain never made contact again. No expert has ever encountered this term, so what the Stardust pilot was trying to communicate remains a mystery to this day. In our world, there are people who possess special abilities. Some have fantastic memories, while others can boast supernatural powers. This video was published a few years ago and immediately became popular. Thousands of users discussed the girl's unusual abilities, and some tried to prove that the video was fake. The strange footage was captured by one of the witnesses of the incident. The video begins with people getting off an overcrowded bus. Among them is a girl arguing with someone. Her friend tries to calm her down and holds her by the hands. When two more men come out onto the street, the argument continues. The girl becomes enraged, and when one of the men approaches her and tries to hit her, she suddenly pushes him away using the power of her mind. Everyone around is shocked by what they see, including the girl herself. She looks at her hands in amazement and then uses her ability again. She pushes the second man, lifts him into the air, and then he falls. The people watching this scene literally panic and try to stay away from the girl. The girl continues to look at her hands, after which she again tests her telekinetic ability and pushes a table away with her mind. The man again tries to approach her, but she does not let him. The girl herself is in deep shock, and because of this, objects near her begin to fall. It's no surprise that this video gained a lot of views and became the subject of discussion. Some users suggested that the video was staged, but there are many people visible in the footage, and they all appeared genuinely frightened. In addition, the video begins with the argument that took place on public to transport, meaning the author initially just wanted to capture the quarrel and didn't even suspect he would witness telekinesis. And that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon. Your engagement is the best reward for me. Thank you for watching. See you soon. Bye.